All right, we are here after the 49ers beat the Rams 30-23. Sean McVay with that backdoor cover with 0 seconds left. It's either the backdoor cover or he had Maher on his fantasy team. It was one of those two. And I wish we had Al Michaels on the call there because he would have definitely mentioned
Definitely.
it. But
Al has placed a wager or two.
I'd say my overall thought coming out of this game was those two coaches know each other so well. Those teams know each other's concepts so well that this was probably going to be a closer game than I think some people realized. And once I saw once I saw how these teams were playing, I was like, okay, this means something to McVay. He's not going to let Shanahan's team push his team around. So that was my takeaway, which was McVay was going to make sure that the Rams played good football today.
Yeah. And I jokingly said on Facebook, I thought Matt Stafford was washed. If you don't heat that dude up, this is what he can do. He can still light it up. And like you say, the concepts, they did an excellent job, especially early, of keeping him clean and allowing him to make throws. And if you do that, it's it's going to be a long day. But they started to get pressures. Nick started to heat up. Wilkes started to bring more pressure, and they kind of the Niners kind of seized control of the game in the second half. And it was I guess those people who thought this was going to be like a double-digit blowout just don't know how these rivalries, and like you say, particularly those two guys' rivalry works. I mean, it's just not. That was never really going to be in the cards that the Niners were going to like stomp them out. I don't think.
Yeah, and to me, I said this in our Discord, which was I was really afraid that the Niners were going to come out flat just because you're coming off of that high of that Pittsburgh game. There's nothing but 49er fans in this stadium. People are calling it Levi's South. And the one thing that could allow the Rams to stay in there early is if the Niners come out flat. And they don't. The Niners don't come out flat at all. I think they score on their first drive. It was pretty easy. The thing that Stafford and McVay did so well, and I'm actually interested in your thoughts on this because I was trying to figure it out, and I know you're kind of cataloging certain plays and stuff as you're watching, but I was a little down on the Niners defense in the first half, and it sounds like Shanahan was as well. But as the second half played out, I kind of wonder if the game plan defensively was they can't beat us deep and they're not going to be able to run the ball on us. So we got to keep everything in front. If they're going to score, we're going to make them score on long drives here and we're not going to let anything get behind us. We're just going to keep them in front. And, who knew that they had Cooper Kupp part 2. Puka Nacua was awesome. He was Cooper Kupp today for them. And the other receiver, what is his name? Atwell.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he had one catch that he probably should have made down the sideline, but other than that, I thought he was really good as well. But they couldn't break out. They never hit that big play, and so from once they were close in the first half, you get the second half, then you started to see Wilkes bringing the blitzes. Now some of these blitzes were not disguised very well. So Stafford was just sort of figuring out where the blitz was coming from. Receiver and him, great communication. They just throw it where the blitz was coming from. Then you saw Fred Warner blitz, and he was disguising his blitz very well. And he was getting to them. But I think ultimately, if the Niners front four plays a little bit better, the game probably is not as close as it was. But because of that, Stafford was able to take advantage, and he was just scanning, boop, dump, 8 yards, boom, 8 yards, like all day long. And I think it was a little frustrating for Niner fans, but ultimately I think I understood where the Niners knew that they were not going to be able to get beat, and that was just to keep everything in front of them.
It's kind of funny. I was up late last night watching Colorado State.
Oh, so was I.
It was kind of similar in that
Yeah.
I thought that the game plan, like you said, it was sound. The only thing I would have both games, the only thing I would think that the defensive play call would have wanted is his corners to play a little bit more aggressive with the receivers because they the game plan was sound, and you're right, they weren't gonna beat us running the ball, and they had made a decision they weren't gonna let them get behind us. So, but at the same time, you don't just have to seed them these catches. You can be aggressive. You can be aggressive. And there were times, and then Sanchez even mentioned it, that Mooney in particular was just giving Puka, he was just giving him free releases off the line.
Yeah.
You got to challenge him and you got to get up on him a little bit and just make him work. I mean, you can't give him these free releases, and you because you just like you said, Stafford is a vet, so there's none of those blitzes that was coming were things that he wasn't going to be. You weren't going to shock him or surprise him. If you're not disguising them, he's going to be able to diagnose them and know where he's going to have answers immediately as to okay, if that's what it is, that's where I'm going. And you have to give the receiver some sort of challenge. I get it, the guy's fast. Both those guys are burners, so you don't want to let them get on top of you, but at the same time, you have to give some sort of resistance.
Yeah.
You can't just let them go where they want to go. So that was kind of frustrating at times, but I mean that those are really nitpicks in the overall scheme of things. They did cover backdoor, but the Niners from we were tied at the half, but from the third quarter on, pretty much after we got that first touch, we were pretty much in control. I kind of felt we were going to win the game. Again, only in Pick'em would I have taken those points, and I did on ESPN. So I was very aware. I was very aware of the score, and it worked out kind of the way I thought it was. But I never thought that we were the win was in any kind of danger.
No, I think that's a good way to put it. Even when the game was tied at halftime, I saw it more as the Rams are in this rather than the 49ers are in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you want to nitpick, and you mentioned if you want to nitpick, the coverage, and it was a little soft, and Lenore and Mooney were getting picked on a little bit, and those dudes were you just saw the back of their jerseys for a lot of this game. The other thing I think I don't know if Shanahan will mention this, but they were a little sloppier, I'm sure, than he would have liked them. Dre Greenlaw got the penalty that was kind of questionable, but he's also got a reputation for that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Late
he's
in the
not
game,
getting the benefit of it out there.
No. Late in the game, they had the crackback block with Jennings,
which is a dumb rule, but I mean,
I didn't
the rule.
I didn't know it was a personal foul.
Yeah,
personally, I didn't even know that was the rule. So that was there as well, and then there were some penalties late in the game when the Niners were trying to put it away. That it was a little sloppy, and who knows. You hate to say something like undisciplined because that's kind of up to the coaches to define that, but it was a little loose. They were a little loose in a game, but also it's the second week of the season, so you can kind of say, okay, well, really that you're talking about a 3-game preseason where almost nobody plays. So this was a good second week game. Now, if they're that loose, in the middle of the season, then there's some worry. But I think that would be the only other thing that I thought. And we mentioned this guy a lot during the preseason, Moody hit was it a 57? Was it a 57 or a 59? 57
57.
yarder? He hit that solid. He miskicked a kickoff that went out of bounds, which was kind of silly. But
That was
otherwise,
terrible.
man, he had a really strong game, and he even
Yeah.
slips on the last one, and still able to make it a little short one. But yeah, I can't really say, and I know Shanahan's talking right now, but he had mentioned, I only saw a little bit of a clip, which was that, really the difference in the game to him was the fact that they got the 2 turnovers. Now, one of those was a Kyron Williams drop. It was I think Stafford made one bad throw all game long, which was the second interception. And I know Mark Sanchez was trying to blame it on the receiver, but that was a tipped ball up in the air. The Niners made that play. They got the second interception. And then he said the fact that they themselves didn't turn the ball over. Now, Jake Brendel tried 2 times. He tried to turn that ball over twice. So they got lucky. We
got a huge lucky bounce on that one that Kittle runs into, and it just kind of bounces right to McCaffrey, and he's able to advance it. But and then the other one, like you say, that those are always, Brock was able to get on it, but those are always, and again, it's always kind of scary when you got a smaller quarterback like Brock is, when the ball is, there just to be had. I really don't ever want him. I'm glad he was able to get in there and get it, but having him, diving in there head first, trying to get the ball is never the, that's never the way you want it to go. Because it's, it could, we are clearly at a place, I don't know, Greg Papa aside, who I'm not, I don't want to see, I don't want to see, my man, what's his name?
Sam Darnold.
Yeah, nah, I'm good. We need to keep Brock upright. So yeah.
Well, I just wanted to welcome JOV or Jove 49ers in the chat. He was letting out. I say he. I don't know if he. The Jove 49ers was letting out some some expression in the chat. But one of them was that, I think a lot of 49er fans did. They saw, when you see Cooper Kupp on the injured reserve and you don't recognize half the guys on the roster for the Rams, you go, oh, like 49ers should roll. It's in Levi South. So I assume a lot of 49er fans did. But again, there's this rivalry between the coaches. But whose name only got mentioned because of the friendship with the rookie was Aaron Donald. They did a good job with him.
Yeah. And it was really interesting. And Sanchez, I noticed it immediately. And Sanchez mentioned it on the broadcast, how, like it was like the second or third rep of the game on offense. And they sure did. They moved Aaron Donald out there on McKivitz to try to test. Let's see. Let's see if we can find something here the way the Steelers did.
Yeah.
And he held up. He held up well. They gave him a lot of help. There was a back out there just about all the time. Kittle was over there a lot. But he was not nearly as leaky this week as he was last week. So that was a good sign.
Let's talk about Brock a little bit, because to me, Brock looked like Jimmy today. To me, now that's they're. I'm talking about both good Jimmy, and maybe not so good Jimmy. Because what could Jimmy not do? Well, Jimmy can't hit the big play even when the guy's wide open, and Brock missed it like 2 or 3 times today. Which again, very early in the season, not anything I'm necessarily worried about because we've seen him make those plays, but he did miss them today. There was another one where I forget the play, but I think it was to Jennings, and whoever the linebacker was on Kittle's side blitzed, and Kittle just runs down the field uncontested and that would have been an easy touchdown, but instead he hit Jennings on a post or something. It was a good play, but I was like, and there's another one, Kittle, because I'm watching Stafford throw directly where the blitzer is coming from. So I kind of have my eye on it, and I'm like, Brock, he's just wide open. He's running, throw it. Nope, he had his eyes set on Juwan. So, but the other way that he resembled Jimmy was the Niners go 4th and 1 very early in the game, and they quarterback sneak with Brock, and it was a long one. It wasn't a short one. He quarterback sneaks for a touchdown. He gets another 4th and 1 quarterback sneak. So yeah,
it was a good read on his part. That was a very good read on his part. Yeah, and I think you were onto something. That even the misses that you catalog, those are Jimmy misses, and I say misses in air quotes. That if there was ever a criticism I had of Jimmy, is that there were times when there wasn't a reading of the defense post snap. There was a decision pre-snap of where he was going with the ball, and that's where he went. And that was one of those circumstances where you could just tell Jennings was the read, and he wasn't wrong for taking the read. But like you say, if he had just looked at all post snap, he would have seen what you saw and what I saw and what everybody else saw, was that Kittle was gonna be wide ass open. But he's not wrong. He's not wrong for taking the bird in the hand.
Yeah.
But you would like and he's still super young. But that was something that Jimmy was like 8 years in at this point. You're supposed to be able to get your head out of the playbook and read the damn defense. So I'm not putting that on Brock just yet, but that was Jimmy like.
Now the one thing we don't have to worry about with Brock is he can get out of the pocket, so he's not going to throw it too quickly because he can't, or just take a sack. When things break down, there's
or dirt it. He doesn't have to necessarily just dirt the ball either.
So that is different. But I did watch. I was watching Red Zone earlier this morning, and Jimmy threw an interception, and I was just like, deja vu. Like I just felt bad for the Raiders. Like, yep,
he just is who he is. I mean that's for good, for better or for worse. You're gonna get the Jimmy experience.
Yeah. Now there are a lot of young quarterbacks in the NFL right now, and you're watching a lot of them kind of almost learn on the job. Like you see Stroud, Richardson, Bryce Young, even Ritter. Like Ritter was in the red zone, and when Ritter can actually get out and use the run as an option, the defense, he kind of keeps them on their toes. But when he's forced to throw, oh my gosh, it was rough. I was like, man, how can fans deal with this? But then I think back to our days of bad QB play as well. And
I was loving watching Red Zone today, and that Atlanta game, I was watching that a lot, and that's my hot take of the
and then they won
season. Yeah, that's my hot take of the early season. Boy, oh boy, wouldn't Kyler Murray look good in an Atlanta jersey?
I've heard that a couple times.
Atlanta
today.
Falcons jersey. They've got all the weapons with Bijan and Pitt and Drake London and whoever this new dude is who was balling out today, the receiver. I forget his name, but he was playing well. And if they get themselves a quarterback, they might be a problem. But this is not Falcons talk.
Yeah, this is not. But it's just the going. The point is that having Brock back there, for whatever reason, Brock is only in his second year. There is a calmness that I already have with Brock that I don't think I've ever had with Jimmy. Like with Jimmy, you would see some good play, but in the back of your mind is like, okay, when are we going to get the mistake out of the way? The mistake is coming. let's get it out for, early than later, and then you'd sort of pre-plan for it. And I don't really feel that with Brock. Brock generally makes smart decisions now. He'll throw an interception because he can be daring. We saw that a little bit last year where he would try to go for a big play that may not be there. But I still feel way more comfortable with Brock back there than with Jimmy.
There is a calm to his play that there was always, and even now, even as a Raider, there is a certain level of freneticism to Jimmy that was just always kind of off-putting. But Brock is calm, but there are some limitations. His arm is what it is. It's not it's a good arm, but there are going to be throws that, like the one to Ayuk, that if he's going to make that happen, he's got to crank up to try to go get it. It's not as effortless as somebody like Trey, who can just get it there. That's not him. He's going to have to wind up to go get it, and he just missed it because he had to put something on it to get it there, and he just overthrew him. But that's what it is. There are limitations to his game, but he's played so much football in college and now in the NFL that he knows how to work around his limitations. So that's one of the two things that I think set him apart is, one, the calm. He is not rattled. He knows what he's doing, and he has unbelievable confidence in himself, and that it just shows. And then two, he knows, a man must know his limitations. He knows his limitations. You rarely see Brock trying to do something that he can't do. If he knows what he can do, he knows what he can't do, and he plays within himself. And I mean, that's for a young player to be that poised is it's a rarity. So
there was a great article, and it was like the weirdest topic. Matt Barrows in The Athletic, I think it was this weekend, it may have been Friday or Saturday, where he talked about how Brock's leg strength was almost too strong, and it would lock his hips when he would throw because he didn't really have to rotate as much because his legs are almost overly muscular for his size.
Mm-hmm.
And so they talked about having to work with the quarterback coach to remind him that he doesn't need to just rely on leg strength, because what actually happens is when he does do that, his throws don't have that same whip. And so when he needs to dial it up, he's got to remember that it's, he can't just throw it because his lower body is so locked in. He's got to get other parts of his body involved. So it was kind of an interesting thing.
And he had a miss today where Sanchez pointed that out, that his footwork, he got sloppy with his footwork, and he left his right leg out, and he missed right because he didn't set his feet properly. So that's funny that all kind of ties together.
The Sanchez experience I thought was pretty fun today. I don't like it. It's not that I don't like it, but we've heard Daryl Johnston all these years, and I'd rather not have diehard Cowboy fans on my broadcast as a 49er fan. Sanchez is funny because he's got a little bit of the Romo goofy sense of humor. And he gets so excited sometimes, like he's so dialed in on certain things that the things that I'm looking at home watching, I'm like, no. Like, cause there was that, the Debo play late in the game. Debo goes to the sideline, cuts back, and then he actually fumbles the ball. Debo fumbles it, and the ball looks to be going out of bounds. But Sanchez is so dialed in on the fact whether or not it was a fumble, he doesn't even look at the sideline. And Shelvin and I were kind of talking about this in the Discord. And I mean, I love the excitement. I love him being so fired up. But sometimes I wish there's like the producer in the announcer's ear going like, this is why this thing's not happening, because he was like, why aren't they challenging? They got to challenge. Oh, the Niners call a timeout. Oh no, this is good. They're gonna challenge now. Why do you call a timeout? I'm like, dude, the ball was out of bounds.
It's
Stop.
over. It's
The
over.
play is over. Like, don't
Yeah.
but he's so excited. He like zeroes. He's got a little bit of tunnel vision, but I will say that it is enjoyable. I think he's got a really cool personality, and so I like the broadcast overall today.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the other things that happened in the game. Now, I thought the way that McVay and Stafford worked together. So I did this midweek audio on the BSPN podcast feed. So those watching on YouTube, that was strictly for the audio feed, and I think I'm going to do it again. And if it's not too hard for me to do the midweek thing, I think I'm going to definitely try. Now the Niners play this week on Thursday, so I may have to put it out a little bit early. But I was reading Jordan Rodriguez, who did that athletic show about Shanahan and McVay and that coaching tree. She was writing about the game that they won last week against Seattle. And the major takeaway for me was that they were able to just go after the middle of Seattle's defense. And so I'm watching this game with that in mind. And, they got Puka and Atwell, running all over the place, but the middle was open. And I was like, man, I thought because Warner is so good in coverage that the middle was actually going to be taken away. Now, in the second half, I think the Niners had a lot of success taking away the middle of that field. You saw a lot of drop balls. Both interceptions came in the middle of the field. A lot of the plays late in the game when the Rams actually had to try and get bigger chunks of yardage, they couldn't do it. And the Niners kind of defensively in the second half, they were able to set that a little bit better. But that seemed to be part of their strategy, was go after the middle of the field. And I thought the Niners defense really made some adjustments to take that away in the second half. So that was really cool to see, because, a lot of times when we're so focused on our team, to actually go and figure out what happened to the other team that they're going to play, you kind of read some stuff, and there are some writers who are really good at like breaking down the stuff. So I really like Jordan's coverage, and I felt like I had a better understanding of the Rams offense thanks to her notes and her stories and such. So what did you think about the adjustment? Like, did you think that Wilkes and company decidedly said, okay, we need to do this to sort of change the way the Rams are thinking here?
Well, the pressure was noticeable. I know that at least we ended up getting credited for 6 quarterback hits, which is a little is fewer than I charted. And of those 6, ESPN is giving us credit for, whoever their stat person is. Nick got 3 of those, and I would imagine that all 3 of those were in the second half. We definitely got more heat on Stafford in the second half than we did in the first half. He was just back there, he was really just clean in the first half. And we did a better job of pressuring him, which again is just the key to our defense overall. Is we are, I had several people on Facebook talking about how bad our secondary is. It's not that. It's just it is our coverage is just set up. We have to, if we don't get pressure, those dudes are not going to be able to cover for 3 or 4 seconds. It's just not the way it's set up. They are set up to be able, they're trying to just, if you could just occupy these guys for 2.5 seconds, hopefully we're going to heat up the quarterback, and then, it'll be like that. And that was the problem, is we were just we talked about earlier, we were allowing free releases and allowing Puka just to run free across the middle, and Stafford, was unhurried and unbothered, and he was just, picking us apart. So that, I think that's what I saw, is that we did a lot better job up front and with manufacturing pressure in the second half. And that was, to me, the difference, is that, he just wasn't able to there were actually guys in his face making him get rid of the ball quicker than he actually wanted to. And it made a huge difference. I never really did. Our coverage never really changed, and able to do what the hell he wanted to do pretty much all game long. And it was really frustrating to me, is that it became pretty, like you say, Tutu had, like, I think they targeted him like 9 times, but Puka got 20 targets. And it was fairly obvious that he was it. I mean, now he is their offense at this point. And we kind of like Cooper Cup light, in that
Yeah.
he's, when he's out there, there's no secret as to where they're going with the ball. And he has had those kind of games against us too, where we know where the ball is going, and it's still 15 catches for 175 yards. And
Yeah.
and I mean, you look at the dude, and I mean, I'm past that with Cooper Cup, in that you look at him and you're pissed, because why is this dude able to give us this kind of work? But he gives everybody that work.
Yeah.
Because he's just a great player. But it looked like, I say, Puka Light, he was out there. He gave that work last week to the Seahawks, and we got it today. I mean, he was very impressive. I looked at the numbers last week and like, okay, whatever. Fake news. But nah, he was legit. He was legit today.
So out of all of the completions, because Stafford had 34 completions, so 28 of those 34 went to 3 players, including the running back, who had 6 receptions. So Puka and Tutu had 22 out of the 34 receptions. Longest play for Puka was 20 yards. Longest play for Atwell was 18. But both guys, when it came to average yards per catch, Puka was 9.8 and Atwell was 11. So kind of goes back to what I said earlier about just keeping these guys out in front. And for the Niners, Debo was
beat over the top.
Debo was kind of the same, in that they used him for short stuff and screens and sort of swing passes. But Jennings, 25 yards a catch, Ayuk, 14 yards a catch. So the Niners were able to stretch it out a little bit more. But really, again, these teams just know each other so well. And we've gone. How long have we gone so far? We've gone 33 minutes, and we haven't even talked about CMC, who was really the difference in the first half, because he was on fire in the first half. I think he had like 80 yards in the first quarter.
Yeah.
And I was like, is this dude going to get to 100 in the first half? He ended up with like 116, and they dialed him back a bit. But man, that guy was electric in the beginning of the game. He had a 50-yard run. He had an easy touchdown that he snuck in. It was just like he was able to do whatever he wanted against. And I have a Brad who hosts Thompson and Clark with me. She's just like, this defense is all these young guys, but they settled in as well a little bit in that first half. But man, CMC was awesome.
I find it interesting that no other running back got any touches today. It was all CMC, and then Debo got 5, and Purdy had 3, but that was it. No JP, no, I don't even know if TDP was.
No, he was not active.
And no Elijah Mitchell at all. So that kind of bears watching. But they kept him at 20 carries, which I think it seems reasonable to me that's kind of where you want him. And if he's able to go crazy like he did last week and average 10 yards carry, then that's one thing. But I think that if you could limit his pitch count to like 20 carries per game, that's kind of where you'd want him to be. So it was a real kind of workmanlike performance for him. He's just so explosive. He, him and Debo, and Debo looks so good today.
Yeah,
Just,
Debo looked like Debo from 2 years ago on the
yeah,
touchdown.
that one where that end around where he's directing traffic, and I mean he is just exploding. He is just so fast. It's like a bowling ball.
Yeah.
And he is looking to create contact when he's coming. It's really fun to watch those guys work.
So on the defensive side, I think the guys who stands out because he's in damn near every play is Fred Warner. Again, and to me, he was the one whose blitzes were actually causing a lot of havoc for Stafford. And even when he faked the blitz, there was one play. It may have been the on the grounding play, but there was a play where he faked the blitz and he took away Stafford's underneath, and you could tell Stafford wanted the underneath like immediately because he thought Fred was going to blitz, and Fred took it away, and then Stafford, had to get rid of the football really quickly. And it's just stuff like that where, when you're that fast and you're that good in coverage and you can blitz and you can tackle, like what does Fred not do well on the football field?
Yeah, he really, really is. I mean, he, like you said, literally he did it all. He had a sack, he had a tackle for loss, he had a pass defense, he had a quarterback hit. Literally at all three levels, he made plays. Drake Greenlaw had a really good game. Our boy Isaiah Oliver,
He got the pick.
made some plays today. So it was a it was a kind, I don't want to say, let's say uneven is how I would put it, because I mean they weren't terrible in the first half. It's just they weren't. I as I outlined before.
Bend, but don't break.
Yeah, I wish our defensive backs had been a little bit more aggressive, but I mean, I guess then I say that, but then if the edict is not to get beat deep, then you don't want to get too aggressive, because if you got those guys, especially Puka and Atwell, are speed guys, so what you don't want to do is to get too physical with them and let them get behind you. But you just don't want to just allow them to do whatever the hell it is they want to do. So there's got to be some kind of, middle ground there. But again, that those are nitpicks, because they gave up a lot of yards. We weren't really threatened at all. I mean, we went into halftime tied, but they didn't really get anything going in the second half. They didn't really even threaten us. Like that whole third quarter kind of went by with nothing really. I guess kind of both ways. I guess we had the 57-yarder was the highlight scoring wise of the third quarter.
Yeah.
And then we pretty much owned the fourth quarter. I know they got that last field goal there at the end, and then another one in addition to that. But they weren't really they didn't even really threaten us in the fourth quarter. So yeah, it was, so defensively it was a definite bend but don't break scenario.
So Fred Warner, they asked him about, what was wrong in the first half. And he said they were taking what we were giving them. We had to tighten things up on the back end. So, what we saw was pretty close to what it looks like, what they saw as well. And, it's kind of interesting because I have always watched the 49ers closely, but when you kind of have to think about how to talk about the game, for some reason, I think I'm even more dialed in on certain things that I wouldn't have been dialed in on if I was just watching the game and not having to talk about it. So almost like it's almost like doing this podcast makes me a smarter fan about football, which is kind of cool. It's a little bit of a benefit to doing the show.
It definitely has me thinking about like kind of like narrative arcs, like what is the story that's being told, play after play after play, because I know that, after this I'm going to have to be thinking in terms of, talking about what I saw and what I thought. And that was I never really watched in really, just kind of watching and, with no real aim. But yeah, so definitely, having to come on live right afterward and, to have my thoughts gathered has definitely, it definitely changes the way I watch the game.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Shelvin says that Debo is his player of the game. I was going to go CMC with mine just because I thought he set the tone like from the get go. And that was my worry, which was that the 49ers are going to come out flat. And he made sure that they did not come out flat. Who do you have as your player of the game?
I'm with Shelvin. I would have went offensively, definitely Debo. And just because Fred Warner was right there for me.
Yeah, me too.
But I kind of dinged him because the first half wasn't great for the defense.
Yeah.
Him included. So I went Debo because while I do agree with you that CMC was the tone setter, I think Debo was our best offensive player today.
Oh, I mean, I can live with that. I thought he was, stats wise, his numbers don't really stand out as far as like that he had this like crazy game, but he was so involved. He had 5 rushes for 38 yards, so 7.6 yards per carry with that 1 touchdown. And then receptions wise, he also led the team in receptions, 6 receptions for 63 yards. Speaking of Ayuk, who had the big game last week, I couldn't tell if he got hurt.
Just gonna ask you if you guys talked about that in the chat, because I got started late, so I was playing catch up, so I wasn't really able to chat and watch today. But he seemed like he was not right early.
Yes.
And they were massaging on him, and he was kind of trying to loosen up, and he just never seemed like, even though he kept going out there, he just never seemed right all game. So I and I didn't know if I was, making something up. But yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that as well. Hopefully he's okay and it's not something that like kind of lingers.
So I think he made that first catch, and Sanchez said something about his shoulder, like the way that he reacted, like it looked like a shoulder injury. But then I think he may have missed one play, came right back in, and then he made that next catch, and then he kind of got driven down to the turf and may have fallen on the football, and then that's when they took him to the tent. And so my thought, whenever I see that kind of play, I go, oh no, if it's collarbone's bad.
Yeah.
Shoulder, as long as it's not like dislocated or something, I think you could probably work it out. But then someone said, maybe he just lost his wind and fell on the ball. But I was like, they're not going to send him to the blue
Not
tent
for
for that.
Mm-mm.
And, he didn't, he may have had one more catch. I think he had one more catch in the fourth quarter. But that was it. He was kind of, they didn't target him as much. And that's when Debo started picking it up. So I haven't seen anything on Twitter about the injuries. Shanahan, it doesn't look like he was asked about it, at least as far as I can tell. Asked a lot about Purdy and the missed throws. He also said that he thought Isaiah Oliver had a great game because he was all over the field. But yeah, so hopefully it was nothing.
It's a short week, so it's going to be interesting to see. The injury report is going to be interesting to see who moving forward. I hope somebody does something on the running back situation on why nobody else.
Mitchell.
Right. That's interesting. That bears watching.
I wonder if some of it was just that the Rams ate up so much of the clock. If you look at the time of possession, it was like 34-26-ish for the on the Rams side. So even late in the game, maybe Shanahan, there was that article last week where they talked about, why didn't you pull your guys from the Pittsburgh game until late? And he said, well, that Lions game from 2 years ago is
Yeah.
kind of in the back of his mind where he pulled all his guys early and then the Lions came back and got within like a couple of scores. And so he said that was in the back of his head. So that's kind of what I was thinking. But I feel like they have to get Mitchell involved. He hasn't played football consistently for such a long time, unless, maybe he's still kind of getting back into shape or he's getting back into feeling like himself. It could be that as well. But hopefully,
Wow, the Giants came back.
yeah, I was about to say right now, the Arizona Cardinals kind of played the perfect game here in that they competed, but still lost in the end in the race for Caleb Williams. And especially if they do trade Kyler, they are going to be the leading contender for the Caleb Williams draft pick from USC. But the Giants did come back. There was so much sadness in New York Giants community today. Arizona went up 20-0, I believe.
Yeah.
And then the Giants came back in the third, and then they outscored the Cardinals 17-0 in the fourth quarter to come back and win. And if they would have lost that game and then they come into Levi's, the Giants fan base would be so down. So at least, it's going to be for the Giants fans. Hopefully this is a little bit of a kick in the pants for them and they come into Levi's and, it'll be a good football game. I'm hoping that it's not a good football game. I'm hoping that we win by 50 points every time, but
right.
But this is the thing now, the one thing, and I haven't seen any information about this yet, is Saquon looks like he may have gotten hurt in this game at some point. I just saw the note about him slamming his helmet on the sideline after he left the game with an injury. So that's tough because, like you said, when you have that short week, the injuries for a game like this, where maybe he could have, maybe you could play Sunday, but by Thursday you might not be able to play. So that's got to be a bummer for them. And if I can find any more information about that, I'll mention it before we get off of air here.
Okay. Yeah. That's I feel much better about them coming in 1-1 than 0-2. Because those I just find that the more I watch those numbers kind of matter. Like the Chiefs, if they had lost today, they would have been 0-2. And I mean, it's just there are just certain starts you don't want to get off to. And if you're playing a team that's the difference between playing a 1-1 team and a 0-2 team that is supposed to be a contender. Like, for example, I don't know who gets the Bengals next week, but I would imagine that they're gonna get a very, very fired up bunch. So yeah, you just I'm as a 49er fan, I'm kind of glad they pulled that win out today. And won't be, not to say that they don't want to win, because they obviously do, but that they won't be feel as pressed as they might have if they were 0-2 coming in.
So from Jordan Renan, he's an ESPN reporter for the New York Giants. He just tweeted about 15 minutes ago that he had an X-ray on his right ankle after the game. He had limped around the locker room and it was swollen. So they had to help him off of the field because of an ankle injury. Clearly he had some pain and discomfort. And obviously, like we just said, this is definitely a concern, especially with the short turnaround this week, but also for the long-term prospects of the team. So a damper on the comeback win is that Saquon hurt his foot. So
I wonder if they'll go
I think Rod's screen froze there for a second. We'll see if
Oh,
he. There you go. You're
oh,
good.
was that that was a they were here, right? They were in Arizona.
They're in Arizona, so they're not even
Yeah,
going back to the East Coast. They're flying directly, or I think they may be staying in Phoenix, and then they'll shoot over to
that would make sense. It wouldn't
San
make
Jose.
sense to go back all the way across country just to come back, in 3 days. So yeah.
Where are you with Thursday night games?
Well, I am of two opinions. From a consumer, I like having football on Thursday,
Yeah.
but from a competitive standpoint, I still think that it's unfair to ask these dudes to come back 4 days from now to you know to play a game. And I'm not sure. I still don't believe that product is a it, it, it's a it's a lesser product
Mm-hmm.
than Sunday and Monday night games. But like I say, as a consumer, you know, I'm the problem because more football. You give me Wednesday night football. You could give me football 7 nights a week, and
Yeah.
I would consume it. But I wish that we did more to make that product better. Like I wish we would expand the roster so that
Yeah.
you'd have fresher players, more fresh bodies. I wish that there was some way that we could make sure that if I'm going to play on Thursday, that I get an early slot on Sunday. I mean, just I wish that we did everything we could to give the players the maximum amount of rest in between weeks. If we want it, once we've decided that that's what we're going to do, and the fact that they can get as much money as they can for that spot, they're not going anywhere. So those are, Thursday night games are just a reality now. So, they're we could hand wring and argue about whether or not, but it's going to happen now.
Yeah.
So let's do the best we can to make that product as best we can. And I don't know that we are necessarily there yet.
So if you now this is with Thanksgiving games involved here. Over the years, there have been some Thursday night games. The Niners played a couple in the 80s, in the early 80s. I don't even know why. I mean, I'm assuming one of them was strike related from that one
Mm-hmm.
strike season. But if we look at I think everyone remembers the sadness on Thanksgiving where the Niners played Seattle in 2014 and they were eating drumsticks right on our field.
Mm-hmm.
If you go back to that time frame, since then, Niners have actually lost 4 Thursday night games in a row. Then they beat the Raiders in 2018. Then they beat the Cardinals in 2019. Lost to Green Bay in 2020. They lost to Tennessee in 2021. I remember that game because I was at the Warriors game. Me and the boys were watching the Warriors against Memphis, which was a great basketball game. But the last Thursday night game would have been, I believe it was the Brock Purdy injured ribs game, and the Niners won 21-13. So they've been, they historically they're a little bit over 500, but they've been about 500 in the last 6 years or so. So it's really a coin flip, and I'm using the Stat Muse for the stat there. So
Mm-hmm.
good job, Stat Muse. I'm glad that we could figure that one out. For
Home
me,
opener.
yeah, for me, I'm glad that they get it out of the way right now, right? Because you open up the season, and more than likely you're going to be healthier in the beginning of the season than you are at the end of the season. So I'm happy that the 49ers got this Thursday nighter out of the way. And I'm trying to look to see if I don't think they have any other Thursday games for the rest of the season. I know they have, well, this is not going to help me. I know they have a couple of Sunday and Monday games, but this might be the only Thursday game that they have, I believe, for the rest of the way. So that's cool.
Good.
Yeah, that's going to be good. Oh, no, you know what? They do play Seattle Thursday night, which may be Thanksgiving. I think that's Thanksgiving, November 23rd. Does that sound like Thanksgiving to you?
Yeah, that sounds like a Thanksgiving game.
Yeah, so that'll be the other one. So Seattle, Thanksgiving. And then
Are we up there? I'm sure we're up there.
We are at Seattle, yes.
Yeah.
So got this one out of the way. I feel like you shouldn't have to play more than one Thursday night game.
Yeah.
But at least on that, and on that Thursday night, that is only 4 days after Tampa Bay comes to us. So it's not like they get a break.
2-0, the 2-0 Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Baker Mayfield. I saw him scrambling around, running around. He'll be okay until Baker has to beat some teams, and then he won't be okay. That's kind of how it's going to be. And yeah, they also play Monday night on Christmas this year against Baltimore. Baltimore comes into town. Shelvin mentioned that. So they have a Christmas and a Thanksgiving game. Jeez.
Wow. At least they're home for Christmas.
They don't want 49er fans to spend the holidays without anxiety. You know what? If we have to play Christmas, the Warriors always play on Christmas. They better not make us go head to head. That would be mean.
That stinks.
That would be bad. I mean, my wife's not going to be happy that we're going to have to watch
Either
the Warriors and 49ers on the same night. But at least, let's not make them compete, man. All right. So we will be back Thursday night, I guess, after Niners Giants, and then we'll get like a 10-day break until the next game, which would be against Arizona. So and at that point, Arizona, they are not to say that they're tanking or anything, but it doesn't look good for that squad. So Niners come out of this game clean. It could be good because the big game, I think the one that the NFL is circling, will be that Dallas game at San Francisco on Sunday night, October the 8th. I would imagine that is going to be the biggest selling ticket at Levi's this entire year. And I'm already seeing lowest ticket price at $321.
Wow.
That's crazy. That's the rivalry right now, though. That's what everyone wants to see is Niners Cowboys. So we may get lucky. Maybe both teams will be undefeated going into that game. That'll be crazy. That'll feel like old times.
Oh yeah. That there were many years where that was the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll be back on Thursday evening. Cross your fingers that people are healthy for that game. And I think I'm going to try and do maybe a Tuesday night for Wednesday morning on the audio feed. So the BSPN audio feed. You can find everything, by the way, at bspnmedia.com. We post all of our podcasts, video and audio on that website. So if you ever wonder where to find us, bspnmedia.com is the place. And that is it. So for Rod, I am Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.